What's going on with everyone? Thanks for coming back. I hope today is great for everyone. You know what I'm about to say about XRP that they haven't told anyone else, right? It's been talked about behind closed doors by your central banks for years until now. Following what we've talked about here about what's happening with XRP and on Wall Street right now, the institutional age of XRP is not going to happen. From now on, you won't be able to understand how deep this really goes if you miss the next 10 to 15 minutes. And the XRP Insiders Elite program is where you get the real edge if you want to be ahead of the next big financial change. You'll get special alerts, elite level XRP intelligence, millionaire class mindset frameworks, and full access to all premium tools. Now, let's get to it because this will make sense of everything going on with XRP right now. We found this account called Lord Belgrave. He started a thread that sounds like tinfoil, but as you read it, you realize that the links aren't just hypothetical, they're real. You should carefully think about each name and ask yourself if they work with Ripple or not. Because of that one question, this story goes from being interesting to being impossible to deny. In 2019, he says he was in a consultant room at the Bank of England's Threadneedle Street building, the kind of room where the clock is too loud, the chairs look like they were put there by someone who studies people, and the energy in the air makes you think this isn't a talk for shopping. Barclays, Santander, Deutsche Bank, BNP Paribas, and a policy advisor from the ECB are sitting across from each other at the table, along with Ripple's institutional strategy team. This was the kind of meeting that changes world systems for years on end, even when no one knows it. Someone slides a secret information pack across the table. Inside was a proposal that looked like it was reading a plan for the future banking system. Ripple wanted to create a stable coin backed by the euro that would be used for business settlement. It would not be a retail token or a discount stable coin, a fully collateralized programmable payment instrument that the central bank must be able to see. A digital euro rail that is meant to connect directly to the structure of European banking and work with the XRP ledger as the settlement layer. The room changed as soon as the suggestion came in. The treasury team at Deutsche Bank started estimating liquidity compression right away. Barclays started to break up intraday funding rounds because this kind of settlement instrument lets them avoid problems they've had for decades. BNP Paribas, they figured out that they could free up huge amounts of overhead that were stuck in expensive nostro situations. It's important to note that the ECB representative was already planning how it would work with Target 2 and the future facilities for the CBDC. The numbers made no sense. Less exposure to counterparties, less capital loss, almost no running costs, reconciliation between partner banks in real time, European settlement as a whole, more quickly replenishing liquids, one that is cleaner, safer, and can be fully audited. Then the ECB expert said something that made everyone go, "Oh my God, if a digital instrument backed by euros fits with the way supervision works, it becomes Europe's primary settlement rail. It's the best choice, not because officials make it so, but because it works best." It was then that Europe showed their hand. They knew where things were going with the world, and Ripple saw it right away. The point wasn't to guess. The goal was to lay the foundations for a future financial system in which settlements happen quickly around the world and automatically through software. The same thing is finally becoming clear to Wall Street today for the first time. Now we come to one of the most important things that has ever happened to XRP. There was a news story on XRPO.com called the $2.3 trillion liquidity shock, and in that report, Franklin Templeton, an asset manager with funds worth $1.5 trillion, made a quiet but important statement. As institutional lines get stronger, up to $2.3 trillion in global cash is getting ready to move into digital assets. The real surprise is now here. Along with Bitcoin and Ethereum, they named XRP as one of the biggest winners. There was no such thing before. XRP has been outside of the normal trading world for a long time. Not in ETFs, not in a retirement plan, not in goods for institutions. Up until now. Now that XRP ETFs are live, institutional tracks work, post-2023 compliance is clear, and XRP has been used in settlements before. Wall Street allocators, the people who can move billions of dollars with a phone call, are finally treating it as a real settlement asset. They are not speculating. They're not taking chances. They are recognizing the work that was done while everyone else was fighting on Twitter. Things get even more interesting from here on out. Franklin Templeton said in a recent interview that they have worked with Ripple for many years after the lawsuits were over. It wasn't in the US at first, but in Asia. They've been working together, testing, merging, and getting ready in the background. And now that things are clear in the US, that work is spreading around the world. A big asset manager in the world has admitted that Ripple worked with them for years behind closed doors under an NDA. Also, remember that more than 1,700 NDAs were made public during the case between Ripple and the SEC. We don't know who they all belong to. What about Franklin Templeton? We now do. This is where it goes from being interesting to being clear because WisdomTree's institutional inflow analysis confirms a trend that people in the know have seen for years. XRP is consistently in demand by institutions in all of the world's big regions. Over $549 million has come into XRP this year in Europe. That's more than any other cryptocurrency except Bitcoin and 3 times as much as Ethereum. Outside of the US, XRP made $252 million, while Bitcoin only made a little more than that, even though it had 25 times as many goods. That means that a lot more money moved into XRP compared to its size. A month ago, Bitcoin and Ethereum lost billions of dollars. In the US, however, banks bought more than $241 million worth of XRP. They didn't believe the hype. It wasn't just candles that they bought during times of stress and doubt. That's exactly how smart money builds up worldwide. This trend shows up. Europe, Asia, and other non-US markets have all bought, and now the US has joined them. There is no guesswork. There is only confidence from institutions that know what settlement assets look like long before customers do. The gates to the flood haven't even been fully opened yet, because this is the part that almost no one gets. The gates of hell aren't just imagined. They sound like they're opening already. Sometimes they're even fully unlocked. Vanguard, Bank of America, and Charles Schwab have all changed their minds about crypto after years of being against it. This has happened just in the last 7 days. They did it quickly as well. They were loud when they did it. They all did it at the same time, which means that someone somewhere finally gave the pass. Vanguard, which manages 11 trillion, said that about 50 million of their clients will now be able to buy crypto ETFs. That's one of the world's largest retail and advisor routes getting into digital assets all of a sudden. Even worse, whenever Vanguard opens the door, they pull every conservative financial advisor who follows their rules in with them, even if they didn't want to. Bank of America, which is in charge of $1.8 trillion, went one step further. They're not just letting people see it. They are actively suggesting that their clients think about allocating 4% of their funds to crypto. That's really big. Legacy banks almost never suggest new asset classes, unless it's so clear that they could lose money if they don't pay attention. It's not a small change for client accounts to have 4% of their money pulled out. It's a huge change. Charles Schwab, which has 12 trillion in assets, said that in January, people will be able to buy crypto directly from them. In the past, Schwab has been careful with digital assets and has even been close to ignoring them. So when such a big institution flips the switch, you can be sure that the choice wasn't based on feelings, but on facts. Everything finally fell into place. The rails, the custody, the clear rules, the establishment partners. This isn't adoption in stores. This is not a guess. The biggest banks in the world are giving up because they can't avoid the future any longer. There is a lot of noise when trillions of dollars in inactive capital enter a new asset class. It comes in all at once and very quickly. Most people don't understand this part, but the larger background is about to make everything worse. Something that Jerome Powell said may have seemed dull, but it has had a big effect. He said that the Federal Reserve will have to add funds to the system at some point. That's what quantitative easing means in everyday language. More cash on hand, new money, the exact fuel that sets risk assets on fire. But here's the important part. When new money comes into the economy, it doesn't go to all assets at the same rate. It goes to assets that are legal, easy to get to, and already built into institutional systems. As usual, Bitcoin will be the first to move. Ethereum will do the same. Assets with real throughput and real payment demand, on the other hand, will follow with a lot more force. Also, XRP is at the top of that group. Again, though, none of this makes sense unless you know what Ripple's last move is. This is the plan they've been working on since the lawsuit finished. A piece called Sell XRP, if you are confused, came out on xrpo.com. It sounds mean, doesn't it? The message wasn't about price or hype, though. It had to do with the fact that small investors are fighting while Ripple builds a kingdom of digital assets right in front of everyone. Treasury, G, the Ripple Prime, Rail, Balustrade, each one fits into a bigger picture. Ripple doesn't want to be a wallet business. They don't want to be a money transfer business. They are building the whole institutional stack from top to bottom. The last few things that big banks need before they can go big are custody, payments, liquidity management, treasury automation, on-demand settlement, compliance systems, and the last few rails. The only thing that gets corporate treasury networks into the XRP ecosystem is G Treasury. These aren't little teams. They're not new crypto companies. These are the kinds of companies that move billions of dollars in cash every day across countries, asset classes, and business units. To settle, they need a clear end. They need speed to move value. To adjust, they need to be able to count on things in the whole world. XRP is the only asset that was designed from the start to do that. There shouldn't be 10 different sites for institutions. They want a single system that works with all of their operating stacks. That is being built by Ripple. This is exactly what we've seen happen in every big financial era: consolidation, unification, and acceptance by institutions. The payment layer is not Swift this time, though. It's not between Nostro and Vostro. It is not pre-funded cash that is just sitting there on balance sheets. It's the record for XRP. XRP is going to be the glue that holds together different financial systems. This is because it was made to be the settlement layer that completes payments quickly, lowers friction, increases liquidity, and moves value around the world in real time. That's not possible with Bitcoin. That's not possible with Ethereum. And none of the other 20 are even close. But this is where small sellers go wrong. They see that there is no change in the daily price chart. They see days and candles that are red, instability, and pullbacks. At the same time, the architecture below the surface is taking shape faster than at any other time in XRP's past. Price shows how people feel, but usefulness shows how well things are built, and building things always wins. The organizations can see it. The price isn't being watched every minute. They don't mind short-term drops. As they align the lines that they know will still be there in 10 years, they're building the next settlement system for the world economy. Weird things don't have XRP. It's a business asset that was passed off as a retail token for 10 years because regulations weren't clear. But now things are clear. This is not advice about money. Now we get to the part that uses everything we've talked about. The liquidity shock, the change in institutions, and the unified settlement design make everything very clear. Individual investors are still trying to figure out if XRP is living or dead. But the biggest banks and infrastructure providers have already made up their minds. The plan is no longer just a guess. The puzzle bits are no longer all over the place. Single by single, they're being held in place by the same people who built the banking system you live in now. Ripple's long-term plan was never about retail gambling. That's the truth. It was never about price charts, hype cycles, or stories about bull runs. Ripple has always seen itself as part of the global banking system that is already in place. There are regulatory frameworks for central banks, payment networks, treasury management tools, liquidity hubs, and all of these things work together. All of those long-term relationships are coming together at the same time. Right now, you can see the design right away when you zoom out. Take the NDAs that came out in the case between Ripple and the SEC. It is known that more than 1,700 NDAs between businesses and institutions and Ripple were linked to it. That number by itself is bigger than most people thought it was. They were not NDAs with small businesses. They had NDAs with banks, asset managers, fintech platforms, the government technology partners, and business networks. The size alone shows what kind of system Ripple was building in secret for a long time before anyone in the world knew about it. And that fits exactly with what Franklin Templeton said. They said they had worked with Ripple for years in Asia. Just think about how crazy that is. Many people didn't know that one of the world's largest asset managers was working with Ripple to build real-world use cases in several areas. That's why there were NDAs in the first place. One by one, those connections that were hidden are coming to light now, as if someone turned a switch and decided everyone is ready to see what's been going on behind the scenes. After that, you look at Wisdom Tree's report on bad news. Institutions put more than just a lot of money into XRP. They were steady, global, and went against the flow of the economy. Businesses and organizations bought XRP while they sold almost everything else. Even in markets outside of the US, in Europe, and now in the US itself, you can see the same trend of accumulation. That's not doing business in stores. That is not feeling. That's why finance desks, wealth managers, and money allocators are putting money into an asset they think will be very important for settlement infrastructure. You can't get rid of the pattern once you see it. Europe's conservative financial industry is putting a lot of money into XRP. Ripple has been building with Asian partners for a long time. US organizations are finally waking up to the story, the value, and the ease of following the rules. This connection doesn't just happen. It happens because the system underneath is finally ready for big businesses to use. Big businesses see what's coming long before small investors do. But that's only the top layer. The real change happens when you understand that Ripple's purchases weren't one-time business moves. They were separate parts of a single unified machine. G Treasury is in charge of the company treasury. Ripple Prime handles crypto operations for institutions. Rail is in charge of the payment methods for digital assets and liquidity. Palisade is in charge of the safety and security layers. All of them together make something that looks less like a crypto company and more like a full end-to-end banking system for digital money. It was what the organizations wanted, not pieces and not dozens of tools. They wanted a single tool where they could handle treasury settlement, liquidity, custody, and compliance. Ripple made that very thing. The institutions are getting ready because they know this is the way world settlement will work in the future. Changes in value that can be programmed and happen in real time with XRP acting as the neutral payment asset. That's why the money is coming in. So ETFs are being given the green light. Because of this, the legal questions have changed from, is XRP a security? Also, how can we use XRP to make institutional settlements bigger? This is the reason why banks, asset managers, and company treasuries are working behind the scenes, while regular people on social media argue about price changes. So that's why the story is changing. For the first time in its history, XRP has the same accessibility benefits as Bitcoin and Ethereum, such as ETFs, institutional rails, and custody links. However, it also has utility dominance, which Bitcoin and Ethereum don't have. XRP is not a speculative asset that says it has uses. It's a settlement system that now has access for speculation added to it. That's a totally different building. It's not what the market is used to seeing. This is the main reason why the institutional age of XRP is very different from all the others. Let's put it all together now. In the next few years, trillions of dollars in cash will move from old settlement lines to newer, more efficient ones. That change won't be based on buzz, not a single guess. We'll go into it. It will depend on how well operations run, how much cash there is, how well regulations are aligned, how quickly settlements happen, and how much costs are cut. The groups that act first will be ahead of the rest. Institutions that don't adapt to the change will be left behind. They are all moving toward XRP, which is in the middle of the system. That's why the time is important. This is the reason why these things are happening now. This is the reason why the preparations are being made for what appears to be the largest movement of money in modern financial history. People who only look at the charts will never fully grasp how important this moment is. But people who know about infrastructure, energy, and how institutions work know exactly what's going on right now. You're not early by accident. If you've been here long enough to see this change, you got here early because you paid attention before everyone else. Now, if you're still listening, let me tell you something important before I end the movie. This is where those who want to get ahead of the next step really set themselves apart from everyone else. The XRP Insiders Elite program is where you get the real edge. If you want to get ahead of the next big financial change, it's made for people who want a stronger edge. You will get private XRP intelligence reports, advanced strategy breakdowns, and mindset frameworks that will help you think and act like people who build wealth that lasts generations instead of people who chase hype. You'll also be able to use the full library of premium tools, which will help you make better decisions as we move into the next phase of institutional adoption.